Isa's heart raced as the elder's scream echoed through the clearing. The towering shadow loomed closer, its fiery eyes locking onto them with an intensity that seemed to pierce through their very souls. "Run," the elder shouted again, her voice filled with urgency. "You cannot fight it, not yet." But Isa stood firm, his hand tightening around Ada's. "We're not running," he said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "If this thing wants us, it'll have to face us together." The shadowy figure laughed, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to shake the ground. "Brave words," it sneered, "but bravery without strength is meaningless." The elder stepped forward, her hands glowing faintly as she muttered an incantation under her breath. A shimmering barrier of light formed between the shadow and the couple. "This will hold it back, for now," she said, turning to them. "But you must leave this place. This is no ordinary spirit. It is Nkoa, the keeper of the ancient balance." Ada gasped, her face pale. "Nkoa? The spirit of judgment?" "Yes," the elder replied, her expression grim. "It is drawn to those who upset the order of realms. Your bond, though strong, has shifted the balance, and it seeks to restore what it believes is right." Isa's jaw tightened. "So what do we do? How do we stop it?" "You don't," the elder said. "Not now. You must prepare. There is a sanctuary, a place where its power cannot reach. You'll find it deep in the mountains, past the river of silence. But the journey will test you in ways you cannot imagine." The shadow pressed against the barrier, its fiery eyes narrowing. "You cannot run forever," it hissed. "The balance must be restored." The elder turned to Isa and Ada, urgency in her voice. "Go, now. I'll hold it off as long as I can." Ada hesitated, her gaze lingering on the elder. "We can't leave you alone." "You must," the elder insisted. "If you stay, none of us will survive." Isa pulled Ada's hand. "She's right. We'll come back for her, but we have to leave now." Reluctantly, Ada nodded, and together they turned and ran into the forest. The sound of the shadow's laughter followed them, chilling and unrelenting. The forest grew darker as they ran, the trees twisting into strange, unnatural shapes. Isa kept a firm grip on Ada's hand, his mind racing. "Do you know the River of Silence?" he asked, his voice strained. "Yes," Ada replied, her breath ragged. "It's far, 2 days' journey, at least. And the path is dangerous." Isa glanced over his shoulder, half expecting the shadow to be right behind them. "Dangerous or not, we don't have a choice." As they pushed deeper into the forest, the whispers returned, faint at first, but growing louder with each step. Ada slowed, her eyes scanning the shadows. "They're watching us." "Who?" Isa asked, his voice low. "The lesser spirits," Ada said. "They won't attack, not yet, but they'll report our movements to Nkoa." Isa tightened his grip on the staff he had taken from the clearing. "Then we need to keep moving." But before they could take another step, the ground beneath them shifted, and a thick mist began to rise. Isa stopped, his senses on high alert. "What's happening?" Ada's eyes widened. "It's a trap. The spirits are trying to slow us down." From the mist, shapes began to form, figures with glowing red eyes and twisted limbs. They moved slowly at first, but their movements grew more aggressive as they closed in. Isa raised his staff, his voice steady. "Stay behind me." Ada placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, Isa. We fight together." The first spirit lunged, and Isa swung his staff, the blow connecting with a burst of light. Ada raised her hand, chanting softly, and a wave of energy pushed the spirits back. But the mist thickened, and more figures emerged, their numbers growing. Isa and Ada stood back to back, their breaths heavy, but their resolve unshaken. "We can't keep this up," Isa said, his voice strained. "We don't have to," Ada replied. "We just need to break through." She raised her hand again, this time with more intensity, and the mist began to part, creating a narrow path. "Go," she shouted. "I'll hold them off." "No," Isa said firmly. "We leave together." Ada hesitated, then nodded. Together, they ran down the path, the spirits' howls fading behind them. But the danger was far from over. Nkoa was still out there, and their journey to the sanctuary had just begun. The forest began to clear as Ease and Ada stumbled onto a narrow path, their breaths ragged but their determination unbroken. The spirits' howls faded into the distance, but the weight of Nkoa's looming presence lingered in the air like a storm waiting to strike. "We can't rest," Ease said, gripping Ada's hand tightly. "The elder said we need to find the river of silence." Ada nodded, though her face was pale from exhaustion. "It's still a long way. The spirits will regroup, and Nkoa, it won't stop hunting us." The path ahead twisted into rocky terrain, and the dense canopy of trees gave way to open skies, painted with the warm hues of dusk. They paused briefly, their eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance, they could see the faint glimmer of water reflecting the fading sunlight. "The river," Ada whispered, her voice filled with relief. "It's just beyond that ridge." Ease's shoulders sagged with relief, but only for a moment. The ground beneath them trembled, a deep rumble that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Ada froze, her eyes wide with fear. "It's here." From the shadows, Nkoa's towering form emerged, its fiery eyes glowing brighter than before. Its voice boomed across the landscape, shaking the very air. "Did you think you could escape me? The balance will not be defied." Ease stepped in front of Ada, his staff raised. "We're not running anymore." Nkoa laughed, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. "Brave, but foolish. Do you think your love can save you from me? I am the keeper of order, and you are an abomination in my eyes." Ada placed a hand on Ease's shoulder, her voice steady, despite the fear in her eyes. "We can't fight it here. The river's barrier might weaken its power." Ease nodded, his gaze never leaving Nkoa. "Then we run. Stay close." They bolted toward the ridge, their feet pounding against the rocky ground as Nkoa's massive form pursued them. The spirit's fiery eyes burned brighter, and the shadows around it seemed to stretch and twist, clawing at the edges of their path. As they neared the river, the air grew cooler, and a strange, serene silence enveloped them. The glimmer of water grew clearer, its surface unnaturally still. Ada gasped, her voice filled with awe. "The river of silence. We're close." But Nkoa was faster. The spirit surged forward, its hand outstretched, and the ground beneath Ease and Ada crumbled. Ease grabbed Ada's hand, pulling her forward as they leaped across a gap in the ridge. The spirit's roar echoed behind them, but as they crossed the final stretch to the riverbank, Nkoa halted abruptly. Ease turned, his chest heaving as he stared at the spirit. Nkoa's form flickered, its fiery eyes dimming slightly as it struggled to move closer. The river's glow seemed to repel it, creating an invisible barrier. Ada stepped forward cautiously, her eyes fixed on Nkoa. "It can't cross," she said, her voice trembling. "The river's magic is too strong." Nkoa snarled, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You think this river will save you? It is but a delay. The balance must be restored, and I will find a way." The spirit's form began to dissipate, its fiery eyes fading into the shadows. "Your journey has only begun," it hissed. "And when you falter, I will be there." The silence that followed was deafening. Ease and Ada stood motionless, the weight of Nkoa's threat hanging over them. Finally, Ada turned to Ease, her voice soft. "We made it, but what now?" Ease looked out at the river, its surface calm and unbroken. "The elder said the sanctuary is beyond the river. If this can hold Nkoa back, it's the safest place for us." Ada nodded, her hand slipping into his. "Then we keep moving. Together." As they stepped into the cool waters of the river of silence, the forest behind them grew still. The path ahead was uncertain, but their bond, forged in love and tested by the spirits, would guide them. As Ease and Ada waded through the cool, serene waters of the river of silence, the eerie calmness enveloped them. The sound of their footsteps splashing echoed across the vast stillness, the forest behind them fading into a misty blur. Ada gripped Ease's hand tightly, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Do you think we're truly safe here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ys glanced over his shoulder, his gaze lingering on the distant shadows where Nkoa had disappeared. "Safe for now," he said, though his tone betrayed his uncertainty. "But we need to reach the sanctuary before Nkoa finds a way to cross." The river's glow intensified as they reached the other side, its waters parting briefly to reveal ancient stone steps that led into a dense, otherworldly forest. The trees here were unlike any they had seen before, towering giants with bark that shimmered like silver, their branches intertwined to form a canopy of glowing leaves. "This must be the boundary," Ada said, her voice tinged with awe. "The elders spoke of this place, a realm where even the strongest spirits cannot tread." Ys nodded, his grip on her hand firm. "Then we keep moving." As they ascended the stone steps, a faint hum filled the air, growing louder with each step. The sound was melodic, almost hypnotic, and seemed to emanate from the trees themselves. Ada paused, her expression puzzled. "Do you hear that?" "Yes," Ys said, his brow furrowing. "It feels welcoming, but also cautious." They continued forward, the hum growing louder until they reached a clearing. In the center stood a massive tree with golden bark and glowing blue leaves. Around its base were ancient carvings, symbols that seemed to pulse with life. "This must be it," Ada whispered, stepping closer to the tree. "The sanctuary." But as they approached, a figure emerged from behind the tree, a woman cloaked in flowing silver robes, her face veiled but her presence commanding. Her voice was soft yet filled with authority as she spoke. "You have crossed the boundary of the River of Silence and entered the realm of the ancients. Who are you, and why have you come?" Ys stepped forward, his voice steady. "I am Ys, and this is Ada. We seek refuge from Nkoa, the keeper of balance. Our bond has drawn its wrath, and we were told the sanctuary could protect us." The woman tilted her head, her veil shimmering as if made of light. "Your bond is strong, but it has disrupted the order of realms. Nkoa will not stop until the balance is restored. This sanctuary can protect you, but its protection comes at a price." Ada frowned. "What price?" The woman gestured toward the carvings on the tree. "To remain here, you must pledge your bond to the ancients. Your love will be bound to this realm, and you will never be able to leave. If you choose to stay, the sanctuary will shield you from Nkoa. But if you leave, the bond you share will remain vulnerable." Ys looked at Ada, their eyes locking as they silently weighed the decision. "What do we do?" he asked softly. Ada's gaze shifted to the tree, her expression resolute. "If staying here means we're safe, then it's worth it." "But what about the elder?" Ys asked. "She's still out there, holding Nkoa back. Can we just abandon her?" The woman raised a hand. "The sanctuary can offer protection to others, but only if your bond is strong enough to anchor it. The choice is yours." Ys and Ada exchanged a long look, their hands clasped tightly. "Whatever we choose," Ys said, "we face it together." Ada nodded, her voice steady. "Together." The woman stepped aside, her gesture inviting them toward the tree. "Make your decision, and let the ancients guide your path." Ys and Ada stood before the massive, glowing tree, their hands intertwined as they gazed at its radiant bark. The woman in silver robes watched silently, her veiled face unreadable. The hum of the sanctuary seemed to grow louder, as if urging them to act. Ys broke the silence. "If we pledge our bond here, we may never see the elder again. Never see the world we've fought so hard to protect." Ada's eyes softened as she turned to him. "But if we don't, Nkoa will keep hunting us. And if it catches us, everything we've fought for will be lost." Ys nodded, his grip on her hand tightening. "Then let's do it. If staying here protects you, it's worth it." Ada smiled faintly, though tears glistened in her eyes. "And you?" "I'd give anything for you." The woman in silver stepped forward, her movements graceful yet commanding. "Are you certain of your choice? Once the bond is pledged to the ancients, it cannot be undone. Your love will be eternal, but your connection to the mortal world will be severed. Ys and Ada exchanged a glance, their resolve clear. We are certain, they said in unison. The woman nodded and gestured toward the carvings at the base of the tree. Place your hands on the symbols and speak your pledge. The ancients will hear you. Ys and Ada knelt before the tree, their hands trembling as they touched the glowing symbols. The carvings pulsed with warmth, and a surge of energy coursed through them, connecting their spirits to the sanctuary. Ada spoke first, her voice steady. I, Ada, pledge my love and my spirit to the ancients. In this bond, I find strength, and in this sanctuary, I find peace. Ys followed, his voice firm. I, Ys, pledge my love and my soul to the ancients. In this bond, I find purpose, and in this sanctuary, I find protection. As their words echoed through the clearing, the tree's glow intensified, bathing them in golden light. The air around them vibrated with power, and the hum of the sanctuary reached a crescendo. Ys and Ada felt their spirits intertwine, their bond stronger than ever. Suddenly, the light dimmed, and the clearing fell silent. The woman in silver stepped forward, her voice softer now. It is done. Your bond is eternal, and the sanctuary will protect you. Ys and Ada rose to their feet, their hands still joined. They felt different, stronger, more connected, as if they were no longer two separate beings, but one unified force. But before they could speak, the woman turned to the forest, her tone sharp. Something is wrong. The glow of the tree flickered, and the hum of the sanctuary faltered. From the edge of the clearing, a dark mist began to creep forward, carrying with it the chilling presence of Nkoa. No, Ada whispered, her voice trembling. It can't be here. The woman in silver raised her arms, her voice ringing with authority. The sanctuary's power should have kept it out. Someone, has weakened the barrier. From the mist, Nkoa's fiery eyes appeared, its towering form taking shape. Its voice was cold and venomous. You think pledging your bond would stop me? The balance cannot be denied. Ys stepped in front of Ada, his staff raised. We made our choice. Leave us alone. Nkoa laughed, the sound reverberating through the clearing. Your choice has only sealed your fate. By tying your bond to the sanctuary, you have tied your spirits to this realm. And now, I will tear it apart. The mist surged forward, crashing against the sanctuary's barrier. The glow of the tree flickered dangerously, and the ground beneath them trembled. The woman turned to Ys and Ada, her voice urgent. You must strengthen the sanctuary's power. Your bond is the key, but you must act quickly. How? Ys demanded. Focus your spirits, she said. Channel your love and your strength into the sanctuary. It is your only hope. Ys and Ada exchanged a determined glance, their hands tightening around each other's. Together, they knelt before the tree once more, their hearts racing as they prepared to fight for their bond and their survival. Ys and Ada knelt before the glowing tree, their hands intertwined as the ground beneath them trembled. The mist surrounding the clearing grew darker, more suffocating, as Nkoa's laughter echoed through the sanctuary. You cannot fight me, the spirit boomed. Your bond is strong, but it is a weakness I will exploit. Ada glanced at Ys, her eyes filled with both fear and resolve. We've faced everything together. We'll face this too. Ys nodded, his grip on her hand tightening. We're stronger than it. We just have to believe it. The woman in silver stood behind them, her arms raised as she chanted in a language neither of them understood. The carvings on the tree pulsed with light, but the glow was faint, as though struggling against the overwhelming darkness. Focus your energy, the woman shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Your bond is the only thing that can repel it. Ys and Ada knelt before the glowing tree, their hands intertwined as the ground beneath them trembled. The mist surrounding the clearing grew darker, more suffocating, as Nkoa's laughter echoed through the sanctuary. You cannot fight me, the spirit boomed. Your bond is strong, but it is a weakness I will exploit. Ada glanced at Ys, her eyes filled with both fear and resolve. We've faced everything together. We'll face this too. Ease nodded, his grip on her hand tightening. We're stronger than it. We just have to believe it. The woman in silver stood behind them, her arms raised as she chanted in a language neither of them understood. The carvings on the tree pulsed with light, but the glow was faint, as though struggling against the overwhelming darkness. Focus your energy, the woman shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Your bond is the only thing that can repel it. Ease closed his eyes, his mind racing through the moments he had shared with Ada, their first meeting, their laughter, their struggles, and the love that had kept them together through it all. He felt Ada's presence beside him, her spirit entwined with his, and he knew she was doing the same. The tree's light grew stronger, casting a warm glow across the clearing. The mist recoiled slightly, and Koa let out a low growl. You think your love is enough? I will show you the futility of your bond. The spirit raised its massive form, and a wave of dark energy surged toward the tree. The carvings flared, blocking the attack, but the ground shook violently. Ease and Ada held on to each other, their voices steady as they spoke in unison. We pledge our love to the ancients. We pledge our strength to the sanctuary. Together, we will stand. The tree responded, its golden bark glowing brighter than ever. The light spread outward, forming a dome of energy that pushed the mist back further. Nkoa roared in fury, its form flickering like a dying flame. You cannot banish me, it bellowed. I am the balance, and I will not be denied. The woman in silver stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Your time is over, Nkoa. The bond they share has rewritten the balance. Leave this place, or be destroyed. Nkoa's fiery eyes narrowed, its form shrinking as the sanctuary's light pressed against it. You may have won this battle, it hissed, but the balance is never truly broken. I will return. With one final roar, Nkoa dissolved into the mist, which dissipated into the night. The clearing grew still, the air filled with the hum of the sanctuary once more. Ease and Ada slumped to the ground, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. The woman in silver knelt beside them, her voice soft. You did it. The sanctuary is safe, and Nkoa has been banished, at least for now. Ease looked at Ada, his heart swelling with relief and gratitude. We did it together. Ada smiled weakly, her hand reaching for his. Always. The woman stood, her expression unreadable. The sanctuary will protect you, but your journey is far from over. The balance has shifted, but Nkoa's warning is not without merit. Others may rise to challenge what you have created. Ease nodded, his resolve firm. We'll face them. Together. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, casting a golden glow over the sanctuary, Ease and Ada stood hand in hand, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. As the first rays of dawn illuminated the sanctuary, Ease and Ada stood in silence, their hands intertwined. The warmth of the sunlight bathed the clearing, yet the weight of Nkoa's warning lingered in the air. The woman in silver robes stepped closer, her veil shimmering in the light. You've proven your bond is strong enough to withstand even the most ancient forces. But the balance remains fragile. The sanctuary will protect you for now, but there will always be those who seek to challenge what you've created. Ease tightened his grip on Ada's hand. What must we do to ensure the sanctuary stays strong? The woman gestured toward the glowing tree. The sanctuary draws its strength from your bond. As long as you remain united, it will hold. But the journey you've begun has drawn the attention of other forces. You must prepare yourselves for what's to come. Ada frowned, her voice filled with concern. What other forces? Are there others like Nkoa? The woman's gaze turned toward the horizon, her tone somber. Not all spirits seek balance. Some crave power, and your bond has disrupted their plans. They will come, drawn by the sanctuary's light, and they will not stop until they've claimed it. Ease exchanged a glance with Ada, his determination unwavering. We faced everything together so far. We'll face this too. The woman nodded, her voice softening. Your bond is your greatest strength. Nurture it, protect it, and it will guide you through the challenges ahead. She turned and began to fade into the light, her final words lingering in the air. This is only the beginning of your story. The path forward is uncertain, but your love will light the way. Over the following days, Ys and Ada worked tirelessly to fortify the sanctuary. They explored the surrounding forest, discovering ancient relics and symbols left by the ancients, each one adding strength to the sanctuary's protective barriers. The glowing tree became a beacon, its light growing brighter with each passing day. Yet, even in moments of peace, they felt the eyes of the unseen watching them. One evening, as they rested beneath the tree, Ys turned to Ada, his voice low. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't opened that box? If we'd lived a normal life?" Ada smiled faintly, her fingers tracing the carvings on the tree. "I used to. But now, I see that this is our path. Whatever challenges come, I'd rather face them with you than live a life without meaning." Ys leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. "Then we'll face whatever comes next. Together." But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest grew still, and a cold wind swept through the clearing. The glowing tree flickered briefly, its light dimming before stabilizing. Ys and Ada exchanged a worried glance. "That wasn't normal," Ada said, her voice uneasy. Ys stood, his hand instinctively reaching for the staff he had taken from the elder's hut. "Something's coming." From the edge of the clearing, a low growl echoed through the trees, followed by the faint rustling of leaves. The air grew heavy, and the light of the sanctuary seemed to shrink inward, as though retreating from an unseen threat. Ada rose to her feet, her eyes scanning the darkness. "Do you feel that?" Ys nodded, his voice steady but tense. "We're not alone." The ground trembled slightly, and a shadowy figure began to emerge from the forest. It wasn't Nkoa, but something else entirely, taller, leaner, and more humanoid in shape. Its eyes glowed a sickly green, and its movements were unnaturally fluid. The figure stopped at the edge of the clearing, its voice like a whisper, carried on the wind. "So, this is the sanctuary. How quaint." Ys stepped forward, his staff raised. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure tilted its head, a sinister smile curling across its shadowy face. "I am Akwanwuo, the keeper of shadows. And I've come to see what all the fuss is about." Ada's voice was sharp. "This is a place of peace. You have no business here." Akwanwuo chuckled, the sound chilling. "Peace? Is that what you think you've created?" "No, little one. What you've created is an imbalance that ripples across realms. And I am here to correct it." The figure stepped closer, testing the sanctuary's barrier. The air shimmered as it pressed against the invisible wall, its green eyes narrowing in amusement. "Your bond is strong, yes. But how strong, I wonder?" Ys stepped forward, his voice firm. "Strong enough to stop you." Akwanwuo's smile widened. "We shall see." Ys and Ada stood hand in hand beneath the glowing tree, the sanctuary now calm and quiet. The challenges they had faced together had forged a bond stronger than anything they could have imagined. Around them, the forest hummed with life, the leaves rustling softly in the breeze, as though the world itself was at peace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the clearing in golden light, Ys turned to Ada, a smile tugging at his lips. "Do you remember the first time I saw you in the village?" Ada laughed softly, her eyes sparkling. "You mean when you couldn't stop staring?" "I couldn't help it," Ys admitted. "You were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And you still are." Ada leaned into him, her voice tender. "And you were the only one who looked at me like I was more than a mystery. You saw me." Ys pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her as they stood in the glow of the sanctuary. "I'll always see you, Ada. Not for what you are or where you came from, but for who you are." Ada smiled, resting her head against his chest. "And I'll always choose you, no matter where this path takes us." The glowing tree shimmered brighter, as though blessing their union, and the hum of the sanctuary grew softer, more melodic. The forest seemed to embrace them, its peace reflecting the love they shared. For the first time in what felt like forever, they allowed themselves to simply be. No spirits, no battles, just the two of them, together, standing in a world they had fought to protect. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the sanctuary and the love they had built, Ease and Ada knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Their story, though far from over, was no longer one of fear and uncertainty, it was one of love, hope, and unbreakable unity. The glowing tree shimmered brighter, as though blessing their union, and the hum of the sanctuary grew softer, more melodic. The forest seemed to embrace them, its peace reflecting the love they shared. For the first time in what felt like forever, they allowed themselves to simply be. No spirits, no battles, just the two of them, together, standing in a world they had fought to protect. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the sanctuary and the love they had built, Ease and Ada knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Their story, though far from over, was no longer one of fear and uncertainty, it was one of love, hope, and unbreakable unity. Thanks for watching. Please support me by subscribing and liking the video. Thank you.